A few months back, I asked y'all for comments, criticisms, and critiques about our content. While the subject was centered around my Ben 10 Breakdown series, I opened the floor for everything that the ink tank has done, such as the Drawing Matrix, and Beyond, 5 years later, and Freeze Frame, which will be making a return later this year. I've chosen about 40 or so of these comments to write a response to, which I believe covers just about everything. If you don't see your comment here, it's most likely because another comment asked a question that would have resulted in a fairly similar answer. So I chose comments that would answer just about every question the audience had. But since a good portion of the comments centered around the same few topics on the breakdowns, I realized it would be most productive to begin this video with a general statement about my breakdowns, how they work, and how I create them. To start, I'd like to take the opportunity to once again clarify the difference between the breakdown segments and the actual ratings. For the breakdown segments, everything I say is just whatever pops into my head, be it immediate reactions, fun facts, animation evaluation, jokes, memes, and so on. Any theory I have there is more than likely just made up on the spot, and I probably already forgot it by the time I upload the video. I'm just trying to have fun and share my thoughts in an entertaining way. When it comes to the ratings, I try to remain as unbiased as I can and constantly pull information from message boards, Discord servers, social medias, and the general reaction from when these episodes first aired to ensure I'm hearing as many diverse opinions as I can before settling on a specific number. It is not based on my own opinions, as there are episodes that I've rated higher than I would have liked, and there are episodes with terrible ratings that I still very much enjoy. For example, episodes like Save the Last Dance and Ben Again are perfect episodes in my mind, but were ranked lower due to the rating system. On the flip side, I'm really not too fond of episodes like The Purge or For a Few Brains More, but if you trek around the Ben 10 community, you'll find that these are some of the most popular episodes, so the rating system also takes that into account. For the quick reviews, it can be a little more murky, as the breakdown and the rating segments are one and the same. But as they were constructed with the sole purpose to be shorter and easier to work on, I only prioritize talking about what interests me the most. An episode with poor visuals can still have interesting things I want to highlight. An episode with amazing visuals can have errors or designs I'm not fond of that I want to critique. Two episodes can have the exact same rating, but I could have completely different things I want to talk about. So with quick reviews, I'm talking about the parts of the episodes I want to voice my opinions on the most, but the ratings still follow the same rules as they always do. I do try to be as fair and unbiased with the ratings as much as I can, but even that's not flawless because it will always be perceived through the infinite diverging lenses of the viewers. Due to this, I've considered dropping the ratings altogether, but for the sake of consistency with the breakdowns, I've yet to make that decision. I also love the ratings because it aids in the videos being more than just a reaction video. There's broad educational factors when we devolve into animation development and production, there's recurring jokes, polls, sometimes I write a full-on 2-page essay at the beginning to create a thesis for discussion, and most notably, I pause and rewind the episodes as many times as I need to. As a consumer of reaction videos, it could be frustrating when they bulldoze over your favorite part or the moment you're most excited for them to react to by talking right through it and not absorbing the actual episode they're watching, especially if the part they're ignoring would have played into how they perceive the episode. I want my audience to feel like they're getting something worthwhile when watching each one of my breakdowns. Even the quick reviews, which I feel get heavily underestimated in the amount of care and effort put into them. Sure, they're shorter, but that's just about it. There's still a lot of thought and time put into them as well. But to play devil's advocate, I also feel like the fans are holding the breakdowns to a much higher pedestal than I was aiming for. Sometimes it feels like the community can't handle when I'm a bit harsh on parts of the show they enjoy, and it's disheartening to think that my voice deeply affects them on such an emotional level when at the end of the day, I'm just making a YouTube video. And at this point, I feel like I'm just contributing to those arguments whether I want to or not, which is also why I'm considering dropping the rating segment altogether. There are claims that I am unfairly harsh on one episode, and on the flip side, giving another episode too much credit, which is inevitable and understandable, but I can assure you that I treat each episode exactly the same way, and yes, I do constantly go back to rewatch older breakdowns to make sure they're as consistent as possible, though I also feel like it's important to highlight that I am not a voice for the fandom. The ink tank and I may have considerable reach, but we are not trying to make our content be absolute. If you disagree heavily with what I say in my videos, but still come out entertained, that's more important to me than anything else. A lot of content creators feel like they are not allowed to do or say anything unless it is logically flawless, because that's the most optimal way to ensure the majority of folks can relate to you. But that's not what I want to do with my content. When doing my breakdowns, they're unscripted, messy, tangential, and simply whatever I feel like saying. annoying, and I've endlessly tried to stress over the years that that's all they're supposed to be. That's about all I have to say on the matter, and I hope this helps clear things up. So now, let's jump into the comments and see what all of you have to say. Our first comment reads, in the Frogs of War Part 1 breakdown, I was surprised to see that you missed the fact that Ben's fake-out death was meant to set up Max's decision at the end to keep him safe and send him away instead of fighting. You're correct, those two story beats do connect, but the issue lies in more than just the believability. The episode fails to focus on Ben's fake-out death long enough for us to be invested, as the audience is immediately shown that he survives not 10 seconds later. So the only story weight this has lies in Max's point of view. Even if the audience doesn't believe it, Max as a character believes it could potentially work. But it's hard to accept that Max would actually think Ben was immediately killed in such an, comparatively, mediocre way. So while there is connective tissue in the narrative thread, character-wise to Max Tennyson, it doesn't work. At best, if they needed Max to have another layer of reasoning to agree that Ben should leave Earth, this current episode's execution is not strong enough for it to make sense. Max has seen Ben survive countless other scenarios that is way more devastating than this. I am not convinced he would immediately jump to the conclusion that Ben died in this explosion. A pleasant surprise would have been the return of the chart section after breaking down the entire season, just like how you did with the classic series. Let's be clear, I am a big fan of charts, and I would love to bring them back. But with information constantly shifting, like if I make a typo in the rating system, or if I later change the rating system in videos like these, any charts that I make in these videos may become outdated after a certain amount of time. So I'm holding off on making any more charts until the breakdowns are officially over, to ensure that when I do the charts, the information will have accuracy with its longevity. The hero time counter is actually off by 1. You missed a hero time in good copy, bad copy.
If I don't pass, my mom will ground me, which means minimal hero time.
I guess that's subtle foreshadowing to the episode where he does get grounded and he isn't allowed to use the Omnitrix. Then you corrected it in your undercover breakdown. Before we dive in, I do want to point out that I did in fact miss a hero time for the hero time counter when I reviewed good copy, bad copy.
Which means minimal hero time and 0 Julie time.
I guess it just didn't stick out to me because it wasn't an exclamation, you know? But I've counted non-exclaimed hero times before, so this one should have counted. My bad. But then you counted it a second time in your Outbreak breakdown. But going back through older breakdowns, this one also caught my eye.
Which means minimal hero time and 0 Julie time.
And with the way we've been validating each catchphrase, this one should count too. So I'll be retroactively adding it in. The hero time counter is now at 36. Yeah, that's a big blunder on my end. Thank you for the correction. Hopefully the counter will remain accurate going forward. I think that Bros in Space deserved more importance points as it sets up Amber Ogia, which is used to mind control the Waybads and the Frogs of War, and sets up Rook species / planet as a whole, which become more important later on in Rook Tales and the final countdown. While I do think that Bros in Space makes the concept of Amber Ogia stronger, as Eric6761 points out in the replies, the relevance of Amber Ogia is also covered in later episodes. Ahaha does then counter that some Alien Force episodes got higher points due to setting up recurring characters, just as Bros in Space does, but there is a difference. The characters that Alien Force sets up go on to play important roles in many future arcs. We get characters like Michael, Alan, Helen, Manny, Pierce, and Cooper, who are heavily involved in arcs like the Hybrid War, Ultimate Kevin, and the Rooters, while the characters set up in Bros in Space, such as Rook's family, never reach the same level of relevancy. It's nice to get to know Rook's family, and I do enjoy their screen time, but attributing that to importance doesn't work for the rating system. In the video, every time Ben was forced to change back, you forgot to mention Charles Zenith from the Most Dangerous Game show.
Bring them back, Zenith, or I'll...
Huh?
That's a valid point. Thanks for pointing that out. Please let me know if I missed any other instances. I'm positive that you would have rated the importance of the first episode of Classic, and then there were 10 as a 5 and not a 3 if you have done that breakdown today. I wouldn't go as far to say I would positively rank it higher today, as I do frequently revisit older breakdowns and rating systems to maintain consistency. But this is a scenario that the community responses are an important factor. I've seen this point brought up numerous times over the years, and credit to them, making sure you see this episode would make the times we revisit this scenario in episodes like Gwen 10 and Then There Was Ben more gratifying. So I am willing to set my judgment aside and reward the pilot episode with a 5 in importance. This will be updated when I inevitably make those final charts. For the final Omniverse breakdown, could we get all of the Ink Tank crew in the video to react and watch the final episode of Prime Ben Tennyson Adventure? It would be an awesome way to end the breakdowns and would be amazing to see the Ink Tank crew socializing more on video. This has been something I've been going back and forth on on over the years, but I can never see working. As I continue to stress, the breakdowns are meant to be more than just me reacting to the episodes, as there's a ton of information, analysis, edits, and tangents that I love to break into throughout the breakdowns that makes it difficult when I'm recording with someone else. If you compare the breakdowns that I perform solo versus the ones that have a guest, you may notice that the latter does gravitate more towards standard reaction videos, prioritizing comedic banter opposed to episode analysis. I love having someone to joke around with, but every time I finish editing a breakdown with a guest involved, I reflect on a lot of information that I would have liked to cover had I been in a more focused mindset when recording, which is why even with guest breakdowns, I still do the rating system by myself. This also plays into the episode selection, as any episode with obvious significance, such as season finales to standout episodes, I avoid having guests to ensure I'm giving it my best shot. With those factors at play, having the entire Ink Tank crew on a breakdown, during the series finale no less, would all but guarantee that the video would not be up to breakdown standards. It may be entertaining and hilarious, sure, but it wouldn't be a Ben 10 breakdown. And could we see a Ben 10 breakdown with Yvonne? I like the vibe she had in the drinking video. Plus, she seems like she knows a lot about Ben 10. Plus, would love to see the husband and wife dynamic. I do love finding ways to involve her in my projects, but she is not as invested in being on the content creation side of the Ink Tank. And breakdown recording sessions pre-edit usually last around 2 hours, and I can't imagine she'd want to participate in something that meticulous. Whenever there is a spot for her, we always love having her on, but breakdowns don't seem to be the vibe. Were the Nemetrix predators ever a consideration for a Drawing Matrix episode? I think I'll let Ash take this one.
For the Ultimates Overhauled series, I only ever planned on covering Ben's transformations. It was already a lofty goal of like 60 plus Ultimates, and though I do think they would be cool, I really wanted to move on to other stuff. Now, I'm not saying I won't ever do Ultimate Predators, but I got a couple other things I want to work on first, you know? Like this guy. I gotta finish his movie.
Will Fro's series continue? We need more stuff from him. We would love to do more Little X Big D episodes, or more videos with Fro in general, but we do need your support. With our vast pool of projects, we have to prioritize what's in high demand, and factor in practicality and efficiency. If you want more of those videos, please share them around. Tell your friends, tag your friends, leave a comment, or any other way you can engage. And as for anyone that's watching that has yet to check out Little X Big D, please pause this video and go give it a shot. You may be surprised just how much you enjoy it. The series also sets the stage for projects we'll be tackling in the future, as after 5YL and the breakdowns are over, we're going to deviate more and more from just Ben 10 centered content. So if you're curious about what the Ink Tank may be like without Ben 10, Little X Big D is the perfect starting point. So go check it out and let us know what you think.
I met Kuro Tamashi. Throwback. Nobody remembers that, huh?
Even though you voiced your slight disdain on Ben using a very small group of aliens against Kyber, by Max's monster, I thought you would have come up with the theory that frequencies between the Omnitrix Nemetrix would only resort to each party having a very small selection each. Similarly, why Phil's DNA frequency only activates energy-based aliens for Ben. I can see that theory working, but similar to my point about Max in the Frogs of War, an in-universe explanation doesn't mean it's entertaining. At the end of the day, if I'm watching an animated program, I want to be entertained. By Omniverse, Ben has over 50 aliens at his disposal, but his alien selection, be it intentional or accidental, is tied heavily to factoring in who the Nemetrix predators are facing. This makes Ben's alien selection feel terribly limited and bounces between disappointing and frustrating. It's akin to Ben's ultimate alien selection from the previous series. Sure, we can find numerous ways to handwave why Ben only uses 8 ultimate alien forms by the end of the series, but that doesn't make it interesting. So if you're going to introduce the concept of the Nemetrix, a device that has natural predators to counter his alien forms, but only show off a couple of them, we run into the same problem. And the debate rises on whether or not it was even worth it in the first place, to which I would argue it wasn't. Why did you not have Generator Rex in 5YL more? I'm going to use this as an opportunity to answer this for any possible characters, be it from other shows and franchises, or even ones from within the universe we've already visited. 5YL was created with a certain story in mind, and follow character journeys from 4 focal points: Vlad Plasmius, Ben Tennyson, Danny Phantom, and Divinity. The story was created to follow each of their arcs, challenge their core beliefs, and see how intertwining these 4 individuals can change each other as people. Giving Rex a more important role just for the sake of it muddies the storytelling, and would steer focus away from the story's themes and plots. Some characters we can get away with involving, like Invader Zim, because the very nature of his character doesn't demand any grand arcs or character analysis, versus Rex, who is clearly a complex, three-dimensional character, and it wouldn't make sense to include him without giving him his dues. We do have some fun cameos in the series, like Mr. Bauman, Pac-Mar, Professor Hoakstar, and Siphon, but we only highlight characters that can help build a stronger world. Rex Salazar is a character that by his nature demands his own focus and own storyline, which has no place in what 5YL is all about. I disagree that Ben's interaction with the Hypnotic was character regression. Hypnotic was purposefully activating Ben's reward scepters and trying to get him to give in to temptation and give in to his biggest vices and desires possible. The fact that Ben rather quickly rejected it himself without outside help or advice like nearly every other time, if anything, showed us actual character growth and that he's moved past it by himself. I believe the fact that we need to add all of these extra layers to justify it is exactly why it doesn't work. Within the episode, it's played as a story that Ben needs to come to terms with, even if it does happen remarkably faster than the first dozen or so times we've done this plotline for Ben. And in a meta sense, I can't shake that they only did this plot because early Omniverse needed to cover a lot of the same grounds the previous 3 shows did, just in case you're starting your Ben 10 fixation with Omniverse alone. And if you look around the community, you'd be surprised how many folks say they did indeed get into Ben 10 through Omniverse first. But staying within Universe, Ben has already come to terms with this time and time again. We even have this moment from Absolute Power Part 2 where Ben says,
"I don't even like being famous. I wish I had my secret identity back."
Ben is constantly going back and forth with whether or not he enjoys the spotlight, and this is just another stick in the pile. Of course, it is realistic for humans to struggle coming to terms with their opinions and morals, and no one can instantly change their perspective like a switch. Ben going back and forth between how he feels about these scenarios is a very human trait. But answer me this, do you really think that Ben was intentionally written to be that way?
Omniverse was a huge design change and a huge attitude change from Ben when he regressed a little bit.
I think we can all agree that over the multiple series and writers, it's impossible for Ben to ever be written the same way, and this episode nails that point further. Previously, you've mentioned that you only kept the collar on 5YL Swampfire to respect the canon, but if you were to do a redesign of Blossom Swampfire without respecting the canon, what else would you add or remove besides the collar? Well, I wouldn't be able to answer this question without sitting down and working through it the hard way. The issue primarily lies within the fluctuating, inconsistent, and partially outdated design theories and art style qualifications that 5YL has been through over the years. I give a much more coherent explanation for this in my last comment response video, which I'll link down below, which may answer a lot of questions and speculations the fans have about 5YL's artwork and character designs at length. I will never accept your score for Alone Together, one of the best episodes of all time. I completely agree. That episode is certainly within my top 10 episodes of all time, and giving it a perfect score is a no-brainer in my book. But referring to my explanation at the start of the video, I can't play favorites. I still stand by the score that it's been given is fair, and it's still a pretty good score. If I remember correctly, Rook's truck is included in the repairs counter, and you missed the counter for Rook's truck getting destroyed in the last breakdown for the Albedo arc finale when they crash into the harbor. Indeed, the proto truck does count, but it was already damaged from the previous episode, long before it crashed into the harbor. My critique for the motion comic is that I wish the action was far more fast-paced than it is, and while I understand that you want people to understand what's actually happening, and also the fact that if it was fast-paced the episodes would be shorter, there might be a way to make it feel faster, while making it take the same amount of time. It just feels like sometimes they take a second or two longer to do something that they could have done in an instant. You seem to have answered your own question here, but I'll acknowledge it anyways. Yes, I do purposefully make some of the pacing slower so that audiences can understand the actions more, but additionally, given 5YL originated as a comic book, I also want folks to appreciate the artwork more. With the motion comic, if there's artwork that I feel needs to stand out stronger, I do like to keep it on screen as long as I can without completely sacrificing the pacing. But 5YL is just as much a visual medium as it is a written one. If you feel the pacing may be a bit slow in some areas, there could be some fun things on screen to cherish in those moments rather than impatiently waiting for the next action beat. I think the biggest mistake the breakdowns have ever made was holding the community vote that ended with Secret of Chromastone getting a breakdown, while Above and Beyond got a quick review. I agree, but that's how the results were, so I must honor that. This comment highlights that it makes perfect sense for Albedo's UAF Ultimatrix not to have an activation button and or be mentally activated. I agree that it would make sense, but the issue lies with the lack of explanation and consistency. Nowhere in the show does it ever address that Ben can now activate the Ultimatrix with his mind, and the method in which he does activate it changes from episode to episode. Now, could the Ultimatrix just have multiple forms of activation? Of course, but that's also never established and actually goes against the previous standard. With the classic and Alien Force Omnitrix, there was a clear method of how it works, with Ben even verbalizing the step-by-step process at one point.
Press this button, and when the ring pops up, twist it until you see the guy you want to be. Slam it down, and bammo!
This makes the device more interesting, as now we have mechanics to feed into the lore and functionality of the watch, whereas with the Ultimatrix, it's the first device where it's not clear how it works, making it less consumable and relatable. I really hated that you skipped some good jokes from UAF and didn't give all the episodes a full breakdown, especially ones you said you liked from Alien Force Season 3. That's fair, but I just don't have the time. I think this is a good time to bring up how I actually choose the quick reviews versus the full breakdowns. I know I've talked about this a dozen times before, let's do it once more. So the choice between making a full breakdown versus a quick review has nothing to do with the actual episode. Let's say there's a week where I have time to make at least one full breakdown. So I do. From there, I make as many quick reviews as I have time for. If I have time to make 3, I make 3. If I have time to make 5, I make 5. If I don't have any extra free time, then I don't make any. So by next week, whatever the next episode is becomes the full breakdown, regardless of what it is. Once again, the actual episode has little to nothing to do with that decision.
Randomizer function activated.
Randomizer function?
And given my constantly shifting and rotating schedule, I never actually know how much free time I have until that week begins. So it's always a surprise for me just as much as it is for you.
Explain I shall, and always do.
And it is a complete coincidence that somehow every season finale just so happened to land on being a full breakdown. I promise you, this is just how it works out. Meaning, yes, should the episodes align this way, a season finale could very well be a quick review. But given I've been making these breakdowns for about 4 or 5 years, at this point, I think we can at least agree that this is necessary for a conclusion. This is not to discredit the portion of die-hard Inktank fans that are willing to wait however long it takes for me to do every breakdown in full, and believe me, my appreciation for that should not go unnoticed. But at some point, the breakdowns have to come to an end, and doing these quick reviews makes that easier. In case you don't die in 5 years, can you make full breakdowns for the episodes you did short breakdowns for? Nope. How would a Ben 10K look in 5-whale style? Probably like this. I would like to see more from the Encephalonis system in And Beyond since it got cut short by the end. I can sympathize with the demand to see the remaining planets, but I can't agree that the story got cut short. Had we chosen not to even acknowledge the other planets, Encephalonis 4 itself more than qualifies as a completed episode of And Beyond. While we've done multiple planets before, that shouldn't be considered the norm. With Encephalonis 4, we covered everything we normally would for a planet in full, and the tease of the other 3 was just to misdirect the Psychobos plotline. We do cover more information about these species, along with Ben's transformations for them in our shorts, which you can check out on our channel. Of course, I can agree it would be neat to see the other planets, but with some of the responses saying this episode was either cut short or not up to par with the other episodes, heavily discredits the amount of world building, artwork, and overall effort OR Ash and I put into the planet itself that was featured, and dangerously brushes the threshold of being too prerogative. You gave computer games a 0 in importance. I think it should be bumped up to 1 just because Kevin's "treat a car like a woman" line is pretty memorable line within the fandom. Trust me, you can see that clip enough without watching the episode. I've noticed that a few Omniverse episodes were given some lower ratings in the entertainment category because their jokes were just not good. While I agree with this take because I myself found some of those jokes unnecessary and bad, if the ratings are given based on how good an episode objectively is, jokes made may not be a factor in entertainment because some of them are entirely subjective and depends on what type of humor a person might be entertained by. Right, but that's where the community responses come into play. Also, is Ball Weevil your least favorite new Omniverse transformation? Sorta. I just wanted to experiment with making another alien the butt of the joke instead of just Bloxx. A fair amount of my superficial reactions in our videos is just for the performance, and I felt choosing a new alien to focus on unfavorably to develop the Kuro the artist character was a neat change of pace. I feel like the ratings of the episodes don't align with how good they are a lot of times. Like there is no way Rules of Engagement would be on the same level as The Purge when that episode has one of the worst written scenes in the show. I'd like to emphasize once more that entertainment is only 1/5 of the rating system. Does Ben 23's "It's Gyro Time" count towards the counter? Other characters saying it may count, but starting to delve into the variation explanations might be a bit of a stretch. That's also why going hero doesn't count, and it has to be its hero time. I think some of Ben's inability to pronounce Annihi-what isn't really him being dumb, just an odd word to pronounce at times. I don't think it's fair to judge his intelligence based on a word that just trips him up. Right, but that also falls into the explanation versus entertainment category. It's a cheap joke that gets old very quickly. Realistic explanations is not an excuse for entertainment. I always wondered what your thought process was when making an And Beyond video. How do you go about creating an entire civilization and history for a species we know very little about outside of Ben's heroics? I'll let Ash take this one again.
The answer is very simple. I am a nerd. I love researching stuff. Doing deep dives on various topics is my jam. When I look at aliens, I try to break them down into themes and anatomy. Then I go researching, trying to find very similar themes and anatomy in real life stuff. Then once I've found similar things, I will connect the dots with the alien, twisting and manipulating the details and brainstorming new stuff to turn those real life facts into more interesting lore bits for the aliens, whether it be culture or just how their powers work. I just try to have fun with it.
Where do you get the phrase "keep it fizzy" from? I've looked over the internet and can't find anything. Very curious about it. To be frank, originally it meant nothing. I wanted to create a sign-off, and it sounded like an efficient combination of words that would work to close out a video. But retroactively, I found meaning in the phrase meaning maintaining engagement and activity. In life, it's easy to become stagnant. There's nothing wrong with sticking to a routine. I myself am very schedule-orientated, but be it mentally, physically, or socially, we often find ourselves in some form of a rut. Once you open up that can of seltzer, it's a matter of time before it becomes flat. I've taken keep it fizzy to mean that you should strive to make an effort to feel alive. Shake things up, try something new, call your friends, find new hobbies, step outside your comfort zone, or at the very least, take care of yourself. Don't ever let life feel like it's gone flat. There's a whole world out there, and countless adventures to have. They might not all be great, but don't let that discourage you from pioneering your own enjoyment. If you feel yourself struggling, sometimes, not always, but sometimes, all you need to do is be recarbonated. A couple of times you mentioned that your take on the Chronians are basically a race of Professor Paradox. What would you say the biggest difference is between Paradox and the Chronian race? Great question. So for those unaware, I've described the 5-whale Chronians to essentially be humans, albeit with neon skin. They can warp the fabric of space and time, very similar to Professor Paradox. There's no supernatural powers involved. It's literally all in their head.
I now have total understanding of the space-time continuum.
He doesn't have a time machine. He has a map in his head.
I know where all the shortcuts are.
They can simply think at an extravagantly incomprehensible level that their thoughts alone is what manipulates reality. The difference is that Paradox spent a few millennia marinating in a time vortex, giving him immunity to his own mental abilities.
I exist outside of time, but I can still feel the eons passing.
Whereas the Chronians did not. Think of it like poison. If you ingested a large amount of poison directly, it would kill you. But if you absorbed a tiny amount of poison little by little, you could build up an immunity. At least that's how poison works in fiction. Without the countless years upon years drip feeding their temporal abilities, the Chronians literally burned themselves away using their powers. This also plays into why Divinity, or Ultimate Eon, went through a drastic physical change after using the Godmaker to hyper-evolve himself. Divinity went through the same process as Paradox did, but while Paradox did it slowly over endless lifetimes, Divinity condensed his millennia of temporal meditation into a few minutes, which drastically mutated him into a flying banana. For this one, I lost the comment screenshot, but someone pointed out that there was a missing mistransformation counter in Tummy Trouble. Yep, that was a mistake. What's your favorite Reboot design? Maybe not my favorite, but I do want to show some love for Reboot Stinkfly. It really is a good design. Y'all are just mean. Something I've noticed is that nowadays you have way higher standards for scores, which is fine, but looking back on previous breakdowns, it feels strange to see you give a 3 for something that would warrant a 1 or 0 considering your current standards. It ends up looking like the earlier episodes are way better than they actually are. Back in the first breakdowns, you were very unwilling to give something a 0 unless it was really, really bad. Nowadays, it feels like mid-episodes get a 0 just for being mid. Another factor you may need to consider is the episode's place in the Ben 10 Prime watch list. The first time something happens is far more interesting than the second, third, or 58th time it happens. Episodes from Classic and Alien Force have more novelty because they have a higher chance of doing something new and fresh, whereas by Ultimate Alien and Omniverse, you're bound to see a lot of the same stuff that's far less impressive. A mid-episode can still be good if it lays new ground, but after the spectacle wears off, mid-episodes episodes are just mid. Can you please make a playlist of your Unlisted videos? No. Sometimes you give lower scores for plot, blaming the episode for how future episode treats the point you notice. For example, you fault the episode that Kevin's stepfather and Gwen's brother appeared, for they never show up again. Like, this is clearly unfair with those episodes. Expecting a story to have consistency isn't asking for a lot, or much at all, really. The retroactive knowledge I have for this series is foundational in the rating system, and also plays into why I can't do breakdowns on shows I've never seen. Sometimes your voice sounds like you have mucus or something in your throat, and it kinda bothers me and I don't know why. It's like something you can fix by coughing before recording. That does tend to happen depending on how I'm projecting my voice, which happens a lot, especially in my older videos. I have a history with community theater, and a universal rule for performing live is to speak from your diaphragm, which causes my voice to sound like this. Then there's times like right now where I'm speaking from my throat, which is a lot easier on my voice but completely changes the cadence. Typically I do my videos like this now, which is sort of an in-between, but I wouldn't doubt that there's videos out there I recorded where I was genuinely sick too. But for less performative videos and live streams, I typically just talk like this. I think that covers just about everything I could find in these comments, but please feel free to ask for more clarity on these topics in the comments down below. In the meantime, we dropped a ton of previews for our upcoming projects, along with a commentary live stream that I highly recommend checking out. But until next time, keep it fizzy.
We will not tolerate incoherence.
Special thanks to Andrew Annihi-what in the ink cartridge tier, and Elizabeth Susan in the ink barrel tier. Your contributions greatly help out our projects, and we hope you continue to enjoy our content. Thanks again.